Welcome, Annie Collins here for Lavinia World. Today we'll be creating this tree stump mini interactive fairy card. So let's go over the products I use. We'll start off with the stamps. The Lavinia stamps, we'll start with the Fairy Door Large, which is LAV 141, and I'll be using the stump and the little foliage. The Fairy Foragers, I'll be using this fairy here, and that's LAV 498. The mini Toadstool, which is LAV 216, the Lavender, which is LAV 092, and the Secrets Are Hidden Sentiment, which is LAV 346. I also brought in some Lavinia Dream-Scape papers. This is from the Colourburt collection. And I went ahead and pre-cut and die cut some of the elements we'll be using. So I went ahead and die cut the stitch label on some cream cardstock. That'll be with our sentiment. This frame, this is a portion of the Dream-Scape paper. This little portion here, I picked it up because it had the lightest and some reds I liked. This cream cardstock, which we'll be using to layer behind our frame. Some brown cardstock for layering cardstock, and an A2 side folding card. Right, let me move this all over and show you some of the inks we'll be using. We'll be using Versafine, Clair, and Nocturne, and Memento in bamboo leaves. That's that dewdrop. And here we have some art glitter glue we'll be using to put our card together. My X-Acto knife, and only for briefly, and if you don't feel comfortable with that, you can use scissors and a bit of foam tape. Okay, so let's get started. Here's again another look at our card. First thing I want to do is use that small pre-cut piece of the Dream-Scape paper. I'm going to go ahead and place it into my stamping platform. And I'm going to stamp our tree trunk with the little door. I'm going to place it, I'm going to go ahead and put some washi tape on here to hold it in place so it doesn't move, because I know my magnets are going to be too close to the stamp. Alright, so I want the darker towards the bottom with a little bit of the red, and the lighter portion of towards the top. I'm going to do my best to center this on here. Close my platform door. I'm rubbing my stamp because it's the first time I'm using it, so I'm just kind of conditioning it. You rub it with your hands and that helps it stamp better. It removes some of those oils that are left over from creating the stamps. Okay, so I'm pressing it down using a microfiber cloth across the top of the platform to get an even image. I still have a few little areas that are a little too light for my liking, so I'm going to go ahead and do it one more time. And go ahead and use my microfiber cloth again. And now I have it how I want it. I'm going to peel this off and set it to the side to dry while we work on our frame. Because Nocturne ink, the Versafine Clair, it takes a little longer to dry, so I'm just going to set it to the side. Alright, so I'm bringing in our frame, and I'll bring in now the Lavender, the Toadstool, and the little foliage that's from the tree door stamp. I'm just going to get all my stamps off their backer sheets here, figure out where I want them. Just doing a quick little layout. And I'll move further into screen in a second. It is harder to record and be in screen and stamp all at the same time. Okay, so I'm picking up my stamps. I have a basic layout. I'm going to go ahead again with the Nocturne ink. And I'm just stamping right onto my frame. I have the Lavender off to the right, my little Toadstool on the left, and then towards the center I have the foliage from the tree, from the same stamp from the tree. So I'm going to start layering everything over, cleaning my stamps in between. And now I'm again stamping my Lavender. There, I'm moving it up. I realized I was a little bit off screen, so I'm sorry about that. So you can see I have both the toadstools, one on each end.
the lavender on each end. And now I'm only going to start stamping the tops of the lavender. I don't need the little stem parts. I just want the tops of them to fill in the space. And I'm also going to fill in that space with the little foliage, like I said, from the fairy door stamp set. If you hang it the other way around, it kind of looks like mistletoe. But since I'm putting it right side up, it just looks like a bunch of little leaves or extra foliage. So I'm going to continue to stamp across my frame here, filling in all the space. And we're only going about halfway up the frame. We're not going the entire frame. We want the top of the frame to stay clear. So you see, once we tuck our image of our tree in there, it's going to be surrounded by the frame and all that nice foliage. But I also want some of that foliage around the tree base, so it doesn't look so sparse. So I'm going to go ahead again and bring in our lavender and the little foliage that came with the tree trunk, the tree trunk, that's correct. And I'm going to go ahead and stamp that again using the Nocturne ink. I'm just going to fill in that space, moving it around. I just don't want it to look so empty towards the bottom, because if they're in a forest, you wouldn't have just empty background in a forest. You would have it filled. And I just repeat the process on both sides. And I'll check with our frame to make sure I have enough coverage. And if I don't, I just keep filling it in. I know I want a little bit more towards the front of the tree right here. So sort of like creating a little passageway to our door. Okay, I think I like it. They're both, so it's still wet, so I'm going to go ahead and dry these really quick so I don't smudge. Actually, yeah, so yes, I'm going to go ahead and dry them before I stamp my next image. So I'm not removing my platform just yet. I'm going to quickly dry this because I need the tree trunk to be dry so I can touch the panel for my next step. It doesn't take very long, but you know, if you let it dry on its own, it'll take a little longer, but the heat tool does help it move a little faster. I'm not as concerned as with the frame as I am with the main panel here. So what we're going to do is we're going to use our X-Acto knife and we're going to cut open our door. So I'm going to bring in my cutting mat, my mini cutting mat here, and my X-Acto knife. Now if you don't feel comfortable with this, you can definitely use your scissors. Just cut a small hole on the side and then use your scissors to go around. But they're pretty straight cuts. You know, one is like a V formation towards the top and then the straight side and straight bottom. So it isn't so difficult. Just take your time with it. If you don't feel comfortable going straight without something straight against it, use a ruler, but I advise a metal ruler to keep you nice and straight. But I'm pretty comfortable with an X-Acto knife. So I'm going to bend the door open. I'm going to use my bone folder here to kind of create a crease to score it, and then I'm bending back onto my bone folder, and then I just crease it over, and it'll be open and close. So now we're going to start adhering, well, no, back that up. We're not adhering anything. We're just layering everything so I can mark off where my door opening is. Now I cut the cream panel the same size as the frame so that it's nice and even, so I didn't have to worry about things wiggling. So now I'm going to go ahead and put it more or less how I want it. Then I'll trace lightly with my pencil the door opening. I'll remove everything else, set that aside. And you can barely see it. It's very light, but I did trace it out. And now it's a little too dark for my liking, so I'm going to just make it a little bit lighter. And I'm going to get my fairy, and I was stamping her within that little traced area. Again, using the Nocturne ink. So I'm going to get her more or less where I want her. And her wings will be cut off, just the tips of them. It doesn't worry me too much. She's in her house. It's almost like we peeked in watching her whiz around in her little house. So once I have her where I want her, I'm going to pick her up and use some Nocturne ink, stamp it down. And I will do this twice because I want her nice and dark. Oh, I guess I only did it once. Usually I do it twice. Okay, so I'm gently and carefully erasing my lines because I don't want to smear my ink. So I don't even try to erase by the wings. So what you missed here, my video got corrupted, was I adhered all the layers. So I adhered the panel to the stamped panel to the frame, and then both of those onto the cream, making sure that our fairy's in the center. I added foam adhesive, and now I'm going to adhere it to our card base. No, not to our card base, to our brown cardstock, which I have adhered to the card base. All right, so I'm centering this because it's not even close to centered. Now that I have it where I centered and low enough for my sentiment to fit, I have stamped my sentiment onto our pre-cut stitched creamed cardstock. I used, like I said, the Memento bamboo leaves. I'm adding some foam adhesive only to the top, and I'll use some liquid adhesive towards the bottom. And I don't mind it overlapping my tree a bit on the top. I'm going to get that on there as centered. I want a little bit of the brown to show on the top. So I'm sorry we missed that one part of just layering and adhering. I'm not sure what happened, but it got totally jumbled up. It was pixelated. Okay, so now I'm going to bring in some Nuvo drops in copper. And, or actually it's called Copper Penny. And I just squeeze off a little bit on the side to make sure there's no air bubbles. I'm filling in the doorknob for our fairy house. And I'm just going to put little dots of it by the sentiment and all around the bottom of the card. So in between the foliage area there, just to fill in some of the spaces and bring some of that copper down towards the frame area. So the frame itself is like a coppery color. It's actually like a burnt umber. So I thought the copper Nuvo drops would be beautiful with it, and I think it turned out pretty good. So I kept everything in those color schemes, in browns and greens and creams. So here again is our finished product, is our card with a peekaboo door. And let's go over again all the products we used to create this card. We used the fairy door large, the fairy foragers, the mini toadstool, the lavender, and our sentiment, which is called Secrets Are Hidden. And there's our finished card. We also brought in some Memento ink in bamboo leaves, Versafine ink in Nocturne, some Nuvo drops in Copper Penny, and I used a little bit of wink of Stella on our fairy so that when you open it, she wouldn't look so flat. She would be nice and shimmery in there. Not sure if my camera's picking it up too much, but it's still a fun, cute, interactive card. And my Nuvo drops aren't dry yet, so I'm trying to avoid them. You have a little bit of dimension, so not so much that you can't mail it through the mail easily in an envelope. So thank you so much for being here. Hope you found some inspiration. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel to find beautiful designs from the rest of our design team. Thank you.